it's hello from him,
Richard Moore, and it's hello from her.
It's Michele Monro. Well, listen, how are you?
Oh, I'm not so bad. I'm battling on as ever, you know.
Excellent. It's really good. I want to firstly thank all the listeners who wrote in. I had a lovely message from a guy called Nick Masterson who told us that he took up singing after meeting Dad, and he recently sang Portrait of My Love to his wife on a cruise ship to the Bahamas for their 50th anniversary, which I thought was lovely. So I wonder what he'll sing to her next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
And then got another email from Florita Bolak, and she says, as a die-hard Filipino fan, his songs will stay forever in my memory, and as far as I'm concerned, no one will ever surpass or even match him as a male vocalist. There will never be another Matt Monro. But of course, I totally agree, but I'm biased. But she also made reference to the book I wrote on Dad's life and how much she enjoyed it. Messages like that really thrill me as much as each article or biog that has been televised, spoken or written, because it lets people delve into the man behind a voice. So I thought this month, Richard, we're going to look at some of the biogs and tributes in different media that have appeared over the years.
Absolutely.
In fact, I was actually quite hurt by how long it took the BBC to do a radio show, which was tribute to a song stylist. It didn't happen until the 7th of February 95, which was 10 years after Daddy died, which I thought was disgusting. But it was a pleasure working with Steve Patterson, who wrote the script, and he recorded all the interviews, including ones with Daddy's brother and sister, and of course contributions from Dave Allen, Billy May, George Martin, Frankie Vaughan, Jeff Hooper and Mummy, of course. In fact, we had several meetings at the house, of which you were privy to, weren't you?
Well, I was later on. I didn't actually meet Steve until 10 years after that, when we both came down to see you and visit the EMI archives, which were still in Hayes at the time. And yeah, Steve was a lovely guy. We got on really well. He was very knowledgeable, and we have to be very grateful to him because
Absolutely.
Years later, after the fact, he contacted us saying, I've still got all the unedited interviews of all the things that I did for that tribute to a song stylist show. And he sent us all copies of these tapes in brilliant quality, straight off his original reels that he'd recorded. He walked around. It was the time when you still went around with a reel-to-reel tape recorder to record these interviews, you know. So he'd taken them straight from the original tapes and sent them to us, and they have been they're just an incredible source, because I know you use them for the biography, and we use them for a later documentary, and it's all, we're all very grateful for Steve for doing that for us and for keeping in touch and for helping us out. Unfortunately, Steve's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a real gentleman and a really good fan of Matt's.
Oh yeah, he definitely was. And as you say, I mean, I am very grateful, because without him we wouldn't have, you know, the interviews that we have got. So
no, absolutely. Yeah.
Then we waited until 2001 for the BBC to record My Kind of Singer. I was happy about this one because Dad's great pal David Jacobs was presenting this 3-part series. Well, they'd met several years earlier, including travelling for Dad's 1964 appearance on the Eurovision Song Contest, which I mentioned last month, and they became firm friends. And he was a staunch supporter of Dad's music, and there wasn't a week that went by without him playing one of the tracks on his radio show.
No, absolutely. Hello there. And of course, he was involved with your dad's music in many other ways. There's another documentary which we will get to later, of course, that he narrated for us, and he was even right up to the. I mean, he was broadcasting almost to a few weeks before he died, and every week he'd have a recording of Matt's on. But there's a wonderful clip out there. I might see if I can put it on, where he's actually in the middle of playing one of your dad's songs, and it's coming from a vinyl record still, and the record sticks halfway through. And he's having to sort that out in the middle of a broadcast.
We got terrible thing to happen. I can't tell you how sorry I am that's doing that. I don't think anything I can do about it at all. I could just probably lift it out a bit and see what happens and bring it back. But I couldn't do it without the end.
Yes, yeah, he's... no, I never met the man, but he seemed a very nice chap.
Oh, he was lovely. He really was. He came to Dad's tribute at the Grosvenor House, among other things, you know. As I say, that not only were they great friends, but he was a fan, and doesn't hurt when you've got your own radio show.
Absolutely. He was one of the few... They made a documentary on David's own life a couple of years before he died, and of course he had to feature Matt within that. He left a lovely tribute in that programme, which we've subsequently reused ourselves.
Sadly missed.
He was just... Absolutely. He was probably, you know, in the business, your dad's number one fan, really.
Hello there. I'm David Jacobs, here to tell you over the next 3 Sundays that Matt Monro was my kind of singer.
Sadly, another of Dad's friends who's passed away was Barbara Windsor, who presented her own East End Men, which aired on BBC Radio 2. I think it was February 2014.
Yeah, that's right.
She celebrated the life and career of the biggest names in popular entertainment from the world of music, comedy and movies. And there was Marty Feldman, Alfred Hitchcock and Daddy, who all had one big thing in common.
Like me, they were all born in London's East End. They grew up as East End boys and as East End men. They went on to conquer the world. Oh, yes, they were true East Enders, all right. First up, we're celebrating one of the finest voices that this country ever produced. The singer, Matt Monro.
And like the previous show we mentioned, Graham Pass was once again producing, and he secured interviews from the archive of Mummy, Billy May, Dave Allen, and the late David Jacobs, who had all left this world by then. But there were then new interviews with myself, Johnny Mathis, Henry Mancini's wife, Monica, Buddy Greco, Helen Shapiro, Rosemary Squires, and of course yourself, Richard.
Well, we say that, but actually I ended up being cut out of the final edit of that show. Yeah, I know it wasn't your fault. It was just for timing. I remember I worked quite closely with Graham on that broadcast, and he phoned me up and towards the end, and he said, "I'm really sorry, I've had to cut you out. We've had so much good stuff from all these interviews that we've done that we've just run out of time." He says, "I could have made it double the length." So, I was a casualty of that, but I didn't mind, to be honest, because the interviews that he'd got were great. And he's another great friend of ours, Graham. We still are in contact with him. And he has let us have copies once again of the full interviews that he made for that show for our archives. And once again, it's been very useful for other projects that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, you say you were a casualty. I can't remember what show it was that was filmed, but Matthew was cut out of one of them. And he travelled a long way to London for it, and they wanted him on the golf club. I remember it quite vividly, and he didn't make the final copy.
Well, the same happened to me. I put up a friend of mine to sing on a TV show. It was called Tonight's the Night with John Barrowman, and she was featured on that, and they got me all the way up to London, and we spent the day. It was a daft thing on a London bus where she was surprised, and then she was going to end up in the studio singing, which she eventually did. But the London filming, they dragged me all the way down there. They made me a feature of lots of the things that happened that day. But when you actually saw the final broadcast, you wouldn't know I'd been there at all. I wasn't in a single frame. Was it really worth dragging me all the way up there? But there you go.
You have to worry when they say you've got the perfect face for radio.
Oh, absolutely. So, anyway, that's what the archive interviews you talked about there. So a lot of those, once again, came from I think we probably supplied the Dave Allen clips from Steve Pattinson's tapes, and Mickey's interview, I think, came from the collection of Isle of Wight radio presenter John Hannam, whose archive of material also came in useful for the next mini radio biography, which was Desmond Carrington After 7. Well, I say next, actually, it probably came to the last one, but this wasn't a full biography as such. Desmond had this strand, produced his own radio shows, and he had this strand where he was featuring a particular artist and an interview with that artist with various music performances within, and he was able to use, because we'd put him in touch with him, able to use John's interview with your father, which I don't think was ever broadcast originally. I think from what I remember John telling me, that he made the recording and then lost the tape.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until years later that he suddenly after your dad had died, probably, that he rediscovered the tape. Yes.
Yeah, said he'd found it.
Yeah. Which was great. I mean, he did eventually broadcast it, and that's where he did the interview with your mum at the same time, so we could sort of do a double header on his radio show with it. And I believe he interviewed you as well, didn't he?
Yeah, several times.
He was a lovely man too, and unfortunately he's no longer with us either. I think he died a couple of years back. But
yeah.
A lot of his, not Matt's, but a lot of his interviews are actually still available as podcasts.
And they're very good as well.
They are, yes. He interviewed so many people.
He was such a nice guy as well. You know, this is the trouble, that so many of the best people in the business have gone.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, one of my proudest achievements, but also my most disappointing, was the 4 one-hour audio documentaries we made for the BBC called The Boy from Shoreditch. So I wrote the scripts while you did all the hard work, of course, with the editing and production of shows, which I can't do. And we'd heard that the BBC were going to do a 90th birthday show with Robbie Williams presenting. Well, it didn't happen. So we took it upon ourselves to create our own comprehensive 4-part series. We completed the project more than a year in advance, and then we made contact with just who we'd been talking about, Graham Pass, to help us with the process of how to submit the project, because we didn't know, and boy, did they push us through the mill.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, we spent so long. I think that we had the advantage, I think, that a lot of it was done during lockdown. So we were sort of prisoners in our own home to be able to make sure that it got over the line. But it was one of those things we put our heart and soul into. I went through every interview of Matt's that I could find, clipped it all into pieces, got them all into separate categories so we could find, and this is still a useful tool now and something I use for this podcast. So if there's something we're talking about, a particular subject, I can go to this database and I can find the subject that Matt's talking about, and I can find the exact interview that he was talking about, and find exactly what clips we require. So it's a very useful thing. Yeah, it took weeks and weeks to go through it all, but
from start to finish, it took us 6 months to complete that project.
It did, absolutely. And having done that, we spoke to various people at the BBC. We spoke to people at Radio 2, BBC 4 Extra, but nobody was particularly interested. We were sort of brushed off. Oh yeah, okay, off you go away. They didn't even listen to it, or even a clip of it. And we never really got quite a satisfactory answer as to why, because you'd got something scheduled that wasn't going to happen. You'd want to fill that slot with something. I don't know, even if it was a cut-down version. But
not only did they not even hear it, but they actually said that they had already got a show in the can for Dad's anniversary, which was a load of poop. I mean, it was a slap in the face, and one, to be honest, Richard, I've never got over, because it just didn't make sense, and there wasn't a programme. There was nothing instead.
No, there was nothing there.
You know,
no.
And I really have not got over the upset, you know. But, well, not quite down and out, because we decided to issue it as a sort of podcast, if you like. But of course, it was beset by copyright and then publisher problems, and you had to deal with all of that, didn't you?
Yeah, you see, the problem is you can't just put something out any way you want to. There's always clearances and rights problems with these things, and whilst the estate owned a large amount of the material that we used, so did Universal, so did Warner, and then the publishing companies behind each song that we featured, even if it was only a clip, they also wanted their cut, and some wanted thousands of pounds for just a short section of a song. So unfortunately, in the end, the podcast idea was as a whole jettisoned, but we still managed to sneak it out in a couple of ways.
I'm Michele Monro, Matt's daughter, and I'd like you to join me in an intimate portrait of the man behind the voice, drawing on previously unbroadcast interviews, extremely rare recordings previously thought lost, and interviews with his family and friends. This is Matt Monro, the boy from Shoreditch. Yes. And the sadness of it was that we had the most amazing people on it. And I don't mean interviews from years ago. You know, we had new material. We had, goodness sake, we had Quincy Jones. Yes. Who was actually the first one to reply to my request to say, would you like to send a little video in and talk about Dad's 90th birthday? And, you know, there was him, Anton de Beck, you know, Diddy Hamilton. We had some great guests, you know.
We did indeed, yeah.
But anyway, if you want to listen to it, it's on the YouTube channel, among other things, but we're very proud of it. I think it's one of our best works, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something I still occasionally listen to. I wouldn't say I listen to many documentaries, but I'm proud of that one, so I do occasionally listen back to it. And it's on Mixcloud as well, because both of those allow material to they will do the clearances for these things, so thankfully it is available and around.
Plus we allowed free use on hospital radio station, because it's not only been staunch advocates of Dad's music like David Jacobs, Diddy Hamilton, Des Carrington and Jimmy Young, who regularly played Dad's music on their radio shows, but also the hospital radio. And in fact, years ago I decided to donate a 1-hour radio show just for hospital broadcasting. And of course, it proved so popular that I did a further 3 over the next few years, much to your upset because you had to edit them. And each year, several stations still ask if they can rebroadcast the Christmas special I did for them, which is really nice. I mean, Dad did a lot of charity work throughout his life, so it's only because of the fans that Dad's legacy is still burning brightly. So I feel it's nice to give back when I can, you know.
Absolutely. And it's not just hospital radios. The boy from Shoreditch has been on community radio stations and local radio stations as well. So it's found a little bit of a bigger life, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's really good.
It is, even though we say it ourselves. Anyway, it's not just about radio, is it?
Well, there's been a couple of made-for-TV documentaries over the years, one with Odeon Entertainment and the other from Green Bay Media. Now, when Odeon approached me, they didn't have a lot of money, so an agreement was reached which included transferring all my old media, which was like VHS and beta, to new media so I could continue to preserve what was in the archive. Well, Odeon spent weeks at the house scanning all the old photographs, and then they set about securing interviews with Daddy's old MD, Kenny Clayton, Bruce Forsyth, Tony Christie, Peter Jameson, Bob West and John Ashby, who was Daddy's last manager. Now, I rummaged through all my old media and handed it over, together with a couple of old format film canisters that I'd found in the garage. Now, as you know, Dad was a massive film buff, and he used to buy these films to show on a pull-down white screen in our lounge. And some of the old Charlie Chaplin ones I gave to Bob Monkhouse for his film collection. But there were several unmarked canisters. Well, the project was well underway when I received a garbled phone call from Odeon's director, Alan Byram. I had to ask him to slow down and repeat what he'd said because he was so excitable. And it transpired that one of the canister contained Dad's cabaret show he did in Australia in 1966. And as it turns out, it's the only full-length concert we have. Well, they begged me to release it, but I stated that they would have to keep to the agreement and release the documentary first, and then I could allow the release of An Evening With. And that actually went straight to #1 in the DV charts on release, which knocked Eminem off the top spot, which Max, my son, thought was the coolest thing in the world. And if anyone would like to view it, it's available on Netflix now.
Yeah, and the documentary was released on DVD. It was called A Portrait of Matt Monro. And I believe if you haven't got a DVD player anymore and want to view it, I think it's available to buy on Amazon Video these days as a download. So
is it?
It's still out there, I believe. And the next thing that came up was another TV documentary called The Man with a Golden Voice. It was made by Green Bay Media, and it was made for BBC 4. It might even have been called BBC Choice at the time it was commissioned. It's that long ago. And it was really quite a hit as such. Narrated by Neil Pearson. who is people don't know Neil Pearson. He's an actor of many great TV series, particularly the one that sticks to mind is Drop the Dead Donkey that he was in. And he narrated the story of Matt with contributions from Paul Gambaccini and George Martin and John Barry, and of course
all of us.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And it was really quite a successful thing. It was part of a strand called Legends that they were putting out on BBC4. And that was a series of documentaries about all sorts of different artists. I remember there was one about Al Bowley and there was one about Roy Orbison and various other people. But Matt's was the highest rated of all of them, to the point that the following year, in June 2006, it was reshown on BBC Two. One of very few, and because this was quite a large documentary series, one of very few that were ever shown, and it had the biggest ratings of the lot.
And wasn't it against a big football match or something?
It was, yeah. It was really big night of TV,
yeah.
And it got millions and millions of viewers. The BBC were delighted with it, so much so that it was shown at least another 5 times between BBC Two and BBC Four over the next 4 years. So, the power of the man still 25 years after his death was still quite strong.
Well, I've just got off one of the cruise lines where I talk about Dad's life and music, and it always amazes me how many people come. Dad has been gone 40 years last February, and I mean, it's stunning, the fondness people still have for his memory and his legacy. So it's wonderful, really.
And the views on YouTube and the comments that we get on there just show how many people still love to listen to him.
Well, that's why I've been stewing for several years, of course, over the fact that very little had been done on Dad's life. And as you know, he was knocked back on so many TV shows and projects in favour of them bringing over the American talent. And then, as you know, about 20 years ago, I had a horrific car crash in the States. And as they were cutting me out the wreckage, I realised that if I didn't make it, then my son would never know about his granddad's life or the contributions he made to the music business. So as soon as I could, I went about writing a book. And I'd read so many biogs in my life, which started when they got famous. And then they'd include a few pages in the middle of the book with, at least 10 or 12 photos. And to me, that's not a life story. So my decision was to write a definitive story, which Mum was really excited about. I warned her I wasn't going to write a Cinderella fairy tale and that if I wrote it, it would be warts and all, but she was very happy for me to do it. Well, it took several years, not to actually write it, but to do the research, because, of course, the advent of the internet allowed me to make contact with people all over the world, people he was evacuated with, he was in the army with, he worked with, and the world was my oyster. So once I finished, I went about trying to find a publisher. Well, yes, I'd never written a book before, so I sent a synopsis to 5 publishers, and they all came back with deals within a week. I was quite shocked. Having never written a book before, I was told it had to be approximately 100,000 words. That I replied that actually was the size of my index. It was like 600,000 words. So I ended up selecting Titan because, interestingly, they'd never published a biography before, but the owner was a massive Matt Monro fan, so for me it clinched it. My conditions were simple. They couldn't change the name, they couldn't edit it, and it had to come out on Dad's anniversary. Then the problem started.
Because
they first of all, they wanted to get a ghostwriter in. Absolutely not. Then they decided it was too long and they wanted to edit it. Absolutely not. And so it went on. And by this time, Mummy had got sick and she was literally dying. I had to work all through Christmas with edits and last minute, alterations, including Christmas Day. And that, of course, took away from my time with Mum. I was so fuming that on the final call, I put the phone down on them and told them to forget the whole thing. But of course, by then we were literally weeks away from going to print. Anyway, they capitulated, I think is the right word.
Absolutely, yes.
And then the hardback sold so well that they delayed the release of the paperback version for more than a year. In fact, I had 2 book launches, one for the paperback, which was at Ronnie Scott's, and the second was at EMI, because we'd collaborated with them to release a special 4 CD set, which was also going to be called The Singer's Singer, which was the name of the book, and a special limited edition of the book itself. Because I was left a bit shell-shocked after the first launch, and I didn't know who was press, radio or fans, I insisted everyone wore a badge. And that gave me one of the biggest laughs of my life, because all of a sudden a hush came over this heaving crowd. It was like Moses had parted the Red Sea, and in walked one of your idols.
Absolutely, yes. There he was, Sir George Martin, somebody I'd wanted to meet for many a year, walking down the room with a name badge on saying Sir George Martin, which was, if anybody, I mean, it was just like, people couldn't believe it, because George, he was getting on a bit by this time, bless him, and he just didn't come to events. He didn't do that sort of thing. But for your dad, he did. He came out, he only spent an hour there, but he got in his open-topped, what was it, Morris Minor or something like that, and he drove down to London from his home, and he and his good lady wife Judy spent a good hour chatting to me and Michelle and various people. There was people like Dennis Lotis was there, and Mike Winters, Buddy Greco, Esther Ranson, Lindsay DePaul.
It was an incredible night.
It was.
In fact, I won an award there. I was presented.
You did indeed.
For outstanding sales, which was quite lovely. And in fact, Gerard Kenny did a wonderful piano tribute, didn't he?
He did, absolutely.
And Buddy Greco got all his nose out of joint because he came up and said, "Why didn't you ask me to do something?"
Well, we didn't even know he was going, did we? He just sort of turned up.
I was talking about DJs. Pete Murray, Mike Margolis, who's Anita Harris's husband, and Anita, who had come, she got up on stage, and the 3 of them had written this poem, which I'm going to read, and said, "In memory of Matt, a wonderful guy, whose voice could raise up to the sky, his songs and singing live forever, perfect, inspiring and musically clever. Every time I introduced Matt, the radio waves would purr like a cat. Matt the master was the perfect singer, much admired by the great ringer-dinger-dinger. Yes, it was Frank Sinatra who famously said, Matt Monro is the perfect singer, his pitch is sublime, and he's also a swinger. Can you imagine the duets in heaven, Matt and Frank singing Ocean's 11? Yes, Matt will be with us for all time, and we can always tune in to the voice sublime." And I know nothing about that, and she just got up and said, "I'd like to say a few words." And of course, then we got a phone call, do you remember?
We did, yes, from good old Brucey.
Who was ringing me from some tropical island.
Absolutely, yes. That's why he couldn't be there. He was disappointed he couldn't be with us, but he was on the other side of the world.
Yeah, and he maybe put him on speakerphone, and he gave a lovely message and said, "Uncle Brucey, wonderful night, wonderful memories," which I was so pleased you could share in, you know.
Absolutely, yes. I still have nightmares about getting that piano up the stairs in EMI. But still, there you go.
You reminded me that we'd had a Fans Reunited meet across the road.
We did, absolutely. There was a restaurant just across the road from EMI's office. It's now part of Warner's, that building. On Wrights Lane, there was I think it was an Italian restaurant across the road, and we used an upstairs room and had lots of fans.
That you'd pick me up with this piano in the back of your van.
That's right, yeah. It travelled all the way from Lancashire with a piano in the back of my car.
Yeah, because we were in EMI, you know, the offices as such, you know, they didn't have the equipment there. So
somebody just said, well, we've got Gerard Kenny playing, but hang on, we haven't got a piano for him to play.
Yes, it was quite a night, wasn't it? And of course,
Yes.
I took a load of the fans across to AMI who'd never have had the opportunity to go in, but ever. So they were thrilled, and yeah, it was just a wonderful, wonderful night. And of course, now the book is on its fifth edition, and in fact, within the first year, I was approached by Daniel Denholm, who was representing Goalpost Pictures, an independent Australian-owned company. And in July 2012, I was waiting for a film concept to come through, which didn't come through for quite a few months. But anyway, basically the film was to look inside the life of Dad, as played by a popular contemporary singer. They thought either Robbie Williams or Jamie Cullen. And they would follow him as he researches, prepares, auditions and films scenes from the movie Matt the Singer, immersing himself in the character, losing his grip on reality, and finally his own identity. Not Daddy, please take note, but either Robbie Williams or Jamie Cullen. It was a weird proposal, but they felt this way it could be released in cinemas rather than straight to DVD. And the last email I got was one that said they were waiting on financing the project. Well, I never heard from them again.
No, it's a shame. And because people often ask, why isn't there a film of Matt's life? And it's a difficult one. We had another email through from a writer called Adam McLean. Only 18 months ago, he contacted us, February 2024. And he was interested, he was inquiring about the rights to the book, and he'd got an idea. He said it was only an embryonic idea written on the back of a napkin, he said. And he was going to see if there was any interest. And it actually got quite a way through this idea. I spoke to him in September of 2024, and he said that he'd heard from his boss only the previous week, and the idea hadn't gained any traction with broadcasters. They'd gone as far as doing a full concept for it. They'd done a full pitch document, and they used it to test the water to see if there was any interest in the TV companies. And unfortunately, none of them bit his hand off. None of them were interested, which is a real shame, because I think Matt's story is a really good one. It's a rags to riches story. There's all the wartime stuff. There's the Hong Kong stuff. There's the
love story.
The struggle. Yeah, absolutely. There's the love story. There's the struggle to become famous. There's all the problems that beset him during his career. It's a really good. It would have made a good. They did they've done mini series recently on Noel Gordon and on Cary Grant. So you'd think, well, surely they could do one on Matt. Sorry? And one on Scylla, absolutely, yes. They did one on Scylla.
You wrote to that guy.
I wrote to Jeff Pope to see if I could get him any interest, and it's very difficult to get even close to Jeff Pope. The closest I got was his PA. And I said, look, can we send you a book for you to at least have a look and see if there's any interest there? And that's when things they stopped responding again. It's very difficult. Adam, bless him, he says he still thinks it's a great story. He knows the records still sell. He took it to streamers. Streamers weren't interested. He thinks that it would really take a star writer like Jeff Pope or Russell T Davies, who did the Noel Gordon, to be able to actually get this off the ground. I mean, he's always going to have it in the back of his mind because he really believes it. And if he spots a new lead or anything, or even something that we can, without his involvement, something we can push forward, he will get back in touch with us. But, this is the way of the world now. I think if it had been made 20 years ago, it might have been a different matter. But
yeah, but I remember at the tribute at the Grosvenor House, the BBC and ITV both took out full tables of 10. And then as I was passing, ITV table said, "Oh, we should have filmed this." And I just looked at them.
Yeah.
Because it's always
yeah, they should know.
in fact,
Isn't it just? Yeah.
Anyway, it is what it is.
But let's have a little bit of fun about this now. Okay, so let's say somebody had come forward, and because they did actually say, Adam did say that he didn't tell me who, but he did say they'd got a name attached to the part. So who knows who it was, but I'd be really interested to know who you think. Just any actor, any era, it doesn't matter who, might have been good.
If it was years ago, I mean, obviously it has to be someone handsome, cool and suave. I'd have chosen Cary Grant. But if we're looking at today, it'd have to be George Clooney, wouldn't
it? Yes. What about your dad in his young days? What do you think? Any ideas about that? It is a difficult one, isn't it? You know.
I mean, the thing is,
you don't want anybody too tall.
and Cary Grant, they had that air about them. And if you look at Dad's photo of his American press photo, where he really looked at sort of Bond character, you know, like a James Bond. He did look suave, sophisticated and cool. And I can see, you know, a Cary Grant, a George Clooney carrying that off. But as a young man, I don't know, because Dad was a tearaway. He was very naughty, you know, in the army days and his youth.
Absolutely.
A difficult one. Who would you think?
I'm not really sure.
What did you ask the question for?
Well, because I wondered what opinion you would have. You know, it's there's people who have got the singing ability out there and do things like Timothée Chalamet is a recent one who did the musical Wonka film the other year. But I don't know whether he's too tall or not. I don't know how tall he is. We've just got to watch the size, haven't we?
Yes,
we can't have somebody who's 6 foot playing.
I mean, it doesn't even matter if someone can't really sing, because I suppose they could always put Dad's vocals over it. But it's Daddy didn't really have a look-alike.
No.
I mean, in the old days, Dave Allen said he looked like Richard what was his name? Richard Winmark.
Wymark, yeah.
Well, yeah, Wymark. I don't know. I didn't see the resemblance, but I suppose it doesn't matter if they don't look like him. But
no. Well, if you look at the, I mean, there's so much that can be done with makeup. If you look, they're looking to make 4 films on the Beatles. One based on the story of each of the individual members of the band, due to come out in 2028.
All right.
And you look at the actors that there are for that, they don't look enormous amounts like the originals, but I suppose a lot of it's down to makeup and prosthetics, you know, things like that.
True.
You know,
well, this is why Goalpost's idea was quite unique. Insofar as they'd hire someone like a Robbie Williams, who had, you know, no connection to Daddy, to take the part as a film role. So, and then he got over immersed in the subject and became Matt Monro mentally, which I thought was quite unique. But
as opposed to what eventually happened, where he told the story of his own life and became a monkey. But there you go.
Yeah, what could Dad become? Lion. I mean, the thing is, I'd have to, you know, Daniel Craig would do, because, you know, I'd insist on being in the production and being there.
Well, I've always said I'd want to be the engineer back at Abbey Road Studios. I wanted to play Stuart Elton back in the control room. Just it doesn't have to be a speaking role. Just sat behind the desk.
You know who'd be good as a young Daddy? David Tennant.
He would, yes.
Yes, because he's a cheeky chappy, isn't he?
He is.
You know, when you look at him in the Doctor Who thing, you know, where he's goes off on a tangent and he's all cheeky and funny and, you know, a bit zany. That was Dad.
Yes.
So
I can see a bit of that. We'll have a bit of David. Yeah, have a bit of David Tennant in there. Why not? Yes. Good. Well, I mean, just in case there happens to be an enterprising movie producer or TV producer out there who happens to be listening to this, you know where to find us. Because, you know...
What's the contact?
Well, it's pod@mattmonro.com.
Well done. It's only taken 7 months.
I know, but I could probably say it in my sleep now, which is really good, isn't it? But so that's what it is. As usual, if you want to get in touch with us about any reason at all, please contact us via that email address. Questions, stories, whatever you like. You know,
yes, and also, excitingly, we got a special guest coming up called...
We have indeed.
Bobby Crash.
Indeed, yes, we have. We only found that out yesterday.
Yeah, and if you'd like to ask him a question please let us know.
Yeah, Bobby's a great fan of Matt's and worked with him a
Great
little
friend
bit.
of mine.
And so, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. We'll be talking to him later this month, and hopefully he'll be part of our podcast next month. So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Bye-bye.
Bye.